Our son will be fine, my husband smiled as police taped our torched home. Gasoline reeked. His mistress was arrested. The truth made me sick. I awoke before my alarm even had the chance to sound. This is something I do habitually. At 6 in the morning, a pleasant breeze wafts through the bedroom window from the still somewhat dark sky of May. The Bible I was reading right before bed is sitting beside my pillow. My evening prayers have become my source of spiritual grounding lately, given how hectic things have been. When I got out of bed, Chris wasn't beside me, even though he should have been. He likely had to stay at work late again. These types of mornings have happened more and more frequently lately. The white linen sheets gave no indication that my husband had slept there. As I moved toward the kitchen, I put a couple of slices of whole wheat bread in the toaster and then turned on the coffee machine. While the bread toasted and the coffee brewed, I pulled things from the refrigerator and began assembling Michael's lunch. A peanut butter and jelly sandwich and apple slices. As I was putting together my son's favorite foods, my mind drifted to the empty master bedroom. Early on in our marriage, we always made pancakes on the weekends as a team. The morning sun slowly brightens the kitchen now. Sunlight spills over the recently redone marble countertop, which provides a cozy feeling. But recently I've been doing all of the cooking by myself a lot more in this big kitchen. Mom, good morning. Michael's upbeat voice rings out from upstairs. Our 7-year-old son rushes down the stairs with his regular smile, oblivious to what I'm feeling. He's wearing blue and white striped pajamas and has his favorite baseball glove with him. Good morning, Michael. Be careful on the stairs. Even though I try to be serious, a grin just appears on my face. Being with this kid, I don't worry about anything. This amazing child, we got him after a decade of being married. Those 7 years after Michael came along really were the best times. Photos of Michael growing up cover the walls of the living room. I see pictures of him as a baby, his first birthday party, all three of us posing in front of the Christmas tree, and the most recent family portrait from this spring. Back then, we probably still looked like a real family. After eating, I drive Michael to Oak Hill Middle School. Before getting out of the car, he always gives me a hug. His tiny arms squeeze me, and I can smell a light scent of baby powder. As I pass him his lunch, I look at his face from the side. Everyone says he got Chris's kind eyes, but his smile reminds me of myself. Do you have baseball practice today? Yes. I'm going to do my homework at Grandma Betty's after school and then go to practice. I'm also going to finish the dinosaur Lego set I started yesterday. My son's eyes shine with happiness. The dinosaur he's putting together with Lego bricks is currently Michael's absolute favorite thing. Betty always smiles kindly when she hears about it. Betty Johnson, our neighbor, has been taking amazing care of Michael since she lost her husband. Since she used to teach elementary school, she's been a huge help to me since I work. We often go to church together on Sundays, and afterwards we share brunch. Give Betty my best. Be certain you get your schoolwork done before you start playing. I know, Mom. After saying goodbye to my boy, I go straight to the real estate office. In my fresh suit, I put on my professional sales manager persona. I really hope today is a good one, at least that's what I'm trying to convince myself of. But lately, I've had a strange feeling that something is wrong with our home life. Chris comes home late every night. My husband, working more hours on the weekends, making him less available to his family. I understand he's swamped as the CEO of the construction company, yet I feel like the heartfelt family times we used to have are slowly slipping away. Friday night pizza, they've been replaced by other things, maybe once a month if we're fortunate. Weekend cookouts have become a thing of the past. During my prayers at church, I always ask that our family ties remain strong. But lately, even those prayers have been mixed with worry. And that feeling of discomfort reached its highest point the night before my 3-day work trip. I asked Betty to watch over Michael while I'm gone, just like we usually do. I tell Chris, who's sitting on the couch looking at his phone. The family photo over the fireplace looks down on us silently. With that brief answer, my husband stands up. He's a tall man, and his shadow stretched across the darkening room. I have important business meetings to attend in Chicago tomorrow. I'll return in 3 days. Something about those words really rubbed me the wrong way. But at the time, I couldn't quite figure out what it was. I just felt a little knot of worry forming in my stomach. That white sofa where we talked about the whole idea of raising a kid. It felt like this room held all the happiness of Michael's first wobbly steps. Even though it was full of memories, it oddly seemed chilly now. The very next morning, I left for the airport before my usual time, and Michael enthusiastically waved goodbye. During the cab ride, I kept mulling over how if I could make this work trip a success, maybe we could be a family more often. We could absolutely make things better. My heart full of optimism, I left those Boston streets shining in the morning light. The business dealings went better than I could have imagined. Mrs. Wilson, you gave an absolutely outstanding presentation. Specifically, your ideas about environmental responsibility and community investment were just what we were after. The client across that huge, heavy conference table had a huge smile. In only 3 days, I'd landed our biggest deal. I thought a promotion was practically guaranteed with this. That would equal more time with my family. I'm excited about what's coming. We'll go over the finer points next week. The client's executive shook my hand firmly in that sunny conference room. I felt a rush of pure happiness and relief. As I was heading to the airport, I was already planning what souvenirs I'd get Michael. I was really hoping the airport had the dinosaur toy he'd been wanting. Assuming the flight went well, I figured I'd be home by 8 a.m. I might even be able to tell Michael some good news. Before I let him go to school, that's what I assumed. Then the loudspeaker interrupted my thoughts. The announcement said they were really sorry, but due to poor weather conditions, our flight was delayed. Peering out the window, I saw that the sky was covered with dark, depressing gray clouds. I pulled out my phone and looked at Michael's picture. My boy was smiling widely in his baseball uniform. That grin gave me some hope, and I released a long breath. I'd already emailed Betty first thing in the morning, too. I kept checking the time over and over again while I was in the airport lounge. The departure times on the electronic board kept shifting. The other passengers around me were getting more and more annoyed. When we finally got on the plane, we were already 3 hours late. As I was looking over work emails on the plane, my phone battery quickly died. Just before we landed, the screen went completely black. The chargers were packed away in my suitcase. It was already after 4 in the afternoon when I got into a taxi from the airport. After telling the driver where I lived, he gave a silent nod. I watched the peaceful suburban scenery pass by the car window as the early evening approached. Maple-lined street. Kids were whizzing by on their bikes. Someone was watering flowers in their yard. Then I saw the familiar church steeple. I was practically home. Michael was probably doing his homework at Betty's place. What? As the taxi turned the corner, I froze. 2 police cars were parked in front of my house. White and blue lights were flashing in the still bright afternoon. I noticed a large group of folks had assembled. They seemed to be reporters wielding cameras. The neighborhood women, all anxious, were standing close together. Everything felt normal up until now. My voice quivered as I listened to myself. I jumped out of the taxi before it reached my destination and rushed towards the house. The area, which was normally just a drab, blacktop place, seemed unbelievably extensive at that moment. My suitcase made a clattering noise as I pulled it across the pavement. I was aware of everyone looking at me. I recognized some of the faces. There were mothers from the school meetings and neighbors I'd see at church, but no one made any attempt to talk to me. Amy, I pivoted to see Sarah from my across the street running towards me. Her usual cheerful demeanor was replaced with a level of worry I hadn't witnessed before. The compassion in her eyes amplified my worry. "What's happened?" I asked. Is Michael all right?" My voice grew louder. My questions just kind of tumbled out. The police car's lights projected an unsettling, bluish tint. 2 officers in uniform were chatting near the front door. I noticed they had weapons holstered at their waists. Yellow crime scene tape encircled my house. At that very instant, I felt completely drained. Michael, where was my boy? He was supposed to be over at Betty's place. But why were the police here? What was all of the fuss about? My heart was racing so fast. The memory of the happy grin on my son's face from before I left on my business trip flooded my thoughts. I pushed my shaky legs to move, and I ran to the officers. "I live here. Where's my son? Where is my son?" One of the officers looked at the other. The looks on their faces were unsettling, like there was an immense burden. A man who appeared to be in charge, probably an old hand at this, came toward me. I just knew my boy had to be in there. My cry held a deep sense of panic, and it didn't even sound like me. The suitcase I was carrying dropped and ended up rolling near my shoes. My face was probably a mess from crying, but I couldn't worry about that kind of thing right now. "Ma'am, please try to stay calm and just listen to me," he said. The officer spoke in a deep, steady tone. Then suddenly the front door creaked open. A heavy smell of gasoline just hit me in the air. My legs, without my conscious thought, started leading me towards that doorway. It was the passage that led to the living room. That space, usually filled with a welcoming glow, was instead consumed by a terrifying darkness. The welcome mat was ripped to pieces, and the decorative vase was smashed. On the wall, something was scrawled in a red color. It looked as though someone had used lipstick. Those messed-up letters just seemed to stare at me. "You shouldn't get to be happy." My gaze locked onto the family portrait that was torn. It was a photo from Christmas. Michael was smiling so big, and Chris and I were hugging our boy, and now it was torn to bits. Michael's baseball glove was lying there on the floor, cruelly stepped on. I dashed throughout the house, which was totally trashed, yelling my son's name over and over. I went up and down the stairs, looking in closets in the bathrooms, down in the basement. But my son was nowhere to be found. The furniture was flipped, and the stuff from the drawers was all over the floor, with horrible messages written on every wall. It all just increased my level of fear. The senior officer touched my arm softly when I started to fall apart. His face, kind and with bits of gray hair, made me feel just a little bit safer. "Mrs. Wilson, please try to stay calm. Your son is okay. He was at Mrs. Johnson's house just next door like he usually is." When I heard those words, my legs turned to jelly. The officer kept me from falling to the ground. My suitcase tumbled over and all the things inside spilled out. But none of that was important. Thank heavens, the tears wouldn't stop. My makeup was wrecked and my suit was all rumpled. I choked back sobs. The fatting light of dusk streamed in from the window, lighting up the neighborhood. It normally soothed me, but now it seemed so odd, so unreal. Folks were still standing out in front of the house. I could make out bits and pieces of worried chatter. Sitting on the living room couch, the officers started explaining what had happened. It all began around 4 o'clock. A suspicious woman was spotted by a neighbor breaking into my house and pouring gasoline. That was Mrs. White, from across the street, the one who noticed something wasn't right and called it in right away. "Sarah, we always wave to each other and say hello. I see her every Sunday at church. Her fast actions may have stopped something really bad from happening. The person doing it was caught in the middle of it all. She had splashed gasoline around inside and had a lighter with her." "If we'd been a few minutes later," the officer said, and then stopped. A shiver went down my back. Idea that somebody tried to set my house on fire just chills me. If the arson attempt had been successful, it could have caused damage far beyond just our property, potentially impacting the whole area. At that second, I realized that people were coming from the yard. The evening light cast long, elongated shadows over the garden. It was Amy. I recognized Betty's voice. From behind the older woman, a tiny person dashed forward. It was Michael. He ran to me, still wearing his school clothes. His face seemed the same, like nothing was out of the ordinary. I rose to my feet and wrapped my arms around my son. He felt warm and he had a subtle scent of baby powder. I could feel the certain rhythm of his heartbeat. His big brown eyes revealed a hint of worry. His small frame shivered ever so slightly in my embrace. "Mom, is the house ruined?" he asked. "What about my Legos, my baseball glove?" "It's all right, we can get everything back together," I assured him. "Just so relieved you're okay, incredibly relieved." I held my son tighter. Michael's clothes had that familiar post-school smell. Betty repeated the same story. The way it always was, Michael had been doing his homework at her place after school. Even though she sensed something was amiss when the police car sirens went off while she was outside tending the plants, she acted like everything was normal so Michael wouldn't worry. He was busy with his math assignments and drinking lemonade, Betty told me. Her voice quivered just a little. "Amy, I owe you an apology as well," Betty said, sounding sorry. "I tried to call your cell several times. My cell's battery had died." "I'm so sorry," Betty waved her head. "You have no need to apologize at all." And even more significantly, at that very second, a police officer in uniform walked up to someone who seemed to be the head of the police force and whispered something. Although I couldn't make out what was said, I observed the chief's face, which briefly became tense. As evening drew near, the forensic team kept working their way around the residence. There was the clicking of cameras and the scratch of pens making notes. The whole scene felt so surreal, quietly developing in front of me. "Mrs. Wilson, we need to talk to you," I heard. Still grasping Michael's hand, I turned my gaze toward the chief. My pulse quickened because of the compassion shining in his gaze. It was about the woman who had been taken into custody. It turned out that Rachel Morrison was my husband's old secretary. In that fraction of a second, all those little things that hadn't added up suddenly clicked, forming a clear picture. I finally understood why Chris was coming home late, the extra weekend work, the story about the trip to Chicago and Rachel Morrison. In my mind, an unsettling feeling I'd had for a while now took on a specific form. The chief, choosing his words with great care, then said, according to her interview, "The suspect, Morrison, was allegedly involved in a romantic relationship with your husband. She said he promised to marry her, but Betty put her hand on my shoulder." I could feel the warmth of her touch. Michael looked confused, not understanding what was being said by the adults around him. His innocent face caused a pang of pain inside me. Apparently my husband had recently gone back on his word. This left her in a state of mental distress. My brain just shut down. I felt a ringing in my ears. A decade of being married, days that I thought had been happy. A husband I truly believed loved me. Was everything I knew nothing more than an illusion? My recollections felt broken, just like shattered glass. Rachel was after your apple. The head officer proceeded to explain everything. However, my feelings were already numb, incapable of understanding what he was saying. The messages of threats written on the wall now had another meaning. One thing, however, was perfectly clear. I could feel the comforting warmth of the small person holding my hand. I clutched Michael's hand even tighter with my shaking fingers. "Mom, I'm hungry." Michael's pure, youthful voice brought me back to the present. I softly caressed my son's hair. Tears filled my eyes, yet I couldn't break down and cry right now, especially not with my son watching. "Yes, let's stay at Betty's place," I mumbled. "Until our home is safe again." Betty gave a slight nod. Her kind smile made me feel as though I had been rescued. The police officers mentioned they still needed to thoroughly inspect the crime scene. Tomorrow, the forensics team would arrive. They'd be taking pictures of the evidence, gathering fingerprints, and also doing interviews. A whole collection of investigative steps would be completed in a very precise fashion. "Ma'am, according to what your husband's colleagues have stated." The young officer began carefully, continuing his explanation. Morrison had, on multiple occasions, acted erratically. Plus, there was the problem of misuse of the company's finances. "That's enough," the chief interjected, stopping his underling. "We'll talk about everything later. Right now, concentrate on your boy." I nodded without a sound. It felt as if I was hearing the officer from some other place. What had just happened felt so surreal. However, the truth sitting right in front of me was very real. Our home was destroyed. The picture of my family torn apart. And the fact that my husband betrayed me. I knew it would take a while before I fully comprehended everything. For the time being, though, I only had one thing to focus on. That was ensuring my beloved son was all right. Clutching Michael's hand tightly, I gazed up at the fading light of the evening sky. 2 days after the event, I got a phone call from the authorities. I was in Betty's living room, which was foggy with the early morning mist. I held the phone receiver firmly. They had uncovered the full details. Police chief's tone had an unavoidable sense of heaviness. I inhaled deeply, trying to still my racing heartbeat. Michael was eating breakfast with Betty in the next room. His carefree giggling drifted down the hallway. I heard the gentle sound of cereal bowls. My son called out that it was time to eat. It was a regular morning scene which now felt acutely heartbreaking. "Please go on." I heard the rustling of papers from the other end of the call. The reality was more awful than I could have imagined. Chris and Rachel's affair had started over a year ago, right after she started working as his assistant. Fancy restaurants, getaways to hot springs on weekends, and expensive accessories. Hotels in Manhattan, expensive champagne and pearl necklaces. All of these were charged as business expenses. The embezzled sum was way over tens of thousands of dollars. The company's funds, which should have been used for our family, had been spent on outings with his lover. "Yesterday we made contact with your husband. My hands were shaking. This would normally be when I would make myself a cup of coffee. But now I didn't even have that simple thing I could do. He was in Florida, not in Chicago. He was supposed to be with Rachel. But he just took off by himself, abandoning her. All those vows, those sweet words, it was all fake. After making a promise to begin a new life together, he wound up cheating on her as well. Morrison's statement was she was fully informed about everything over the past weekend, it was claimed. Her husband supposedly promised he'd finish with his affair and come back to her. Nevertheless, that turned out to be a simple lie. Chris had ditched her and intended to run off with the company's funds. A considerable sum of money had already been wired into a bank in Miami. She felt trapped and decided she wanted vengeance. The chief's voice went on. "Rachel tried to set my house on fire to make Chris suffer. But the one who would have gotten the worst of it was a completely innocent child. Was that devastation of Michael's room a symbol of her twisted affection? That night we had a visitor we weren't expecting." "Amy," Betty whispered. "Chris is here," I gasped. Through the living room window I could see my husband. He was in his usual nice navy suit. However, his expression was chilling and foreign. Maybe just back from Florida, his lightly bronzed skin seemed to glow under the lamps. "Where's Michael? He's sleeping upstairs." Betty gestured and then led my husband into the living room. "We have to talk." A heavy quiet settled between us across the table. The area where love should have been was now filled with a bitter, icy tension. "The house repairs will be covered by the insurance. As for the company, I've got my own opinions. Your thoughts?" I couldn't help but raise my voice. "You spent corporate funds with Rachel, and she's completely uninvolved in this." Chris interjected, and there was a little fear evident in his tone. He normally keeps it together, but now he was starting to fall apart. "She has no part in it. She wrecked our son's bedroom and ruined all of Michael's treasured possessions. I understand that's what insurance is for." Chris's voice was now cold. "Everything can be replaced." Those words shattered something deep inside me. Was this the man I used to adore? The man who vowed to love me forever in church with that kind smile. I told him quietly but with certainty, "Chris, you just don't get it. There are things that insurance can't repair, like the bonds of family, the commitments we made, and the trust we shared." My husband stood up annoyed, saying, "Don't get all sappy. I have my version of events to tell." "Sit down," I commanded, my voice as cold as ice. "We're not done talking." Surprisingly, Chris sat down again, this time silently. In that action, I felt I recognized a part of the man he used to be. "I am aware of precisely how much money you took without permission. All the hotel bills with Rachel, all the purchases of those extras, all of it. My husband's face lost all color. In the moonlight, his face looked very white. The company's shareholders have already reached a consensus. You're losing all your authority over management. That was the board's unanimous verdict. He pleaded, Amy, there is room to negotiate. And this, I said, handing him the paperwork for the divorce. I've talked to lawyers about all of it. Custody, money to support our child, and the distribution of the things we own. Hold on, Chris's voice wavered. Let me see Michael. I am allowed to visit my son, aren't I? Allowed. A sad smile touched my lips. You wouldn't believe the state our son's room was in, would you? The things Rachel scrawled on the walls, how his precious belongings were ruined. Chris didn't say another word. I saw no remorse in his face, illuminated by the moonlight. Our son still trusts his dad, still believes in him. But eventually he'll realize what kind of man his father truly is. I rose to my feet. You will be hearing from the lawyer sometime tomorrow. Make sure you take care of all the legal stuff with the lawyer, please. The back of Chris, as he walked away, seemed smaller than usual. This was the back I once thought I could always rely on, but now it was just the back of a person who was afraid. The front door slamming shut echoed through the still night. On that particular night, I had finally made up my mind about everything. The discussion of a better job, the thought of the new house, everything would start the next day. For now, I could only gaze upon my son's sleeping face. Michael was sleeping soundly in the guest room at Betty's home. There were Lego bricks spread all over the floor. His little body was holding his baseball glove tightly. A new chapter was beginning tomorrow for us, a mother and her son. Outside the window, the full moon shone quietly. Half a year has gone by since that day. The warm sun of autumn is pouring in through our house's windows now. It's 3 blocks down from Maple Street. It's only a 5-minute walk from Betty's home. It's a cute, single-family home with white walls and black window frames. When we first moved in, Michael gave me a big grin and said, Mom, this place is cute. It's Sunday morning. The aroma of pancakes fills the kitchen. It's Betty's special recipe. As I unscrew the maple syrup, I hear my son's voice. Wow, what a glorious sound. It's the satisfying crack of a bat hitting a baseball echoing from the yard. It's a little baseball diamond. Our neighbors actually built it for us as a housewarming present. Michael is always practicing there on Saturday and Sunday mornings. Michael, time for breakfast. My son rushes in when I call. He's got sweat beading on his forehead and his t-shirt is stained with dirt, but his grin is absolutely radiant. Mom, are we going to Grandma Betty's at church today? Yes, that's correct. Our Sunday service, something we do every week, has become the foundation of our new routine. The church community at Grace Episcopal really welcomed us with open arms after everything that happened. When we pray at church, it slowly starts to mend the hurts that we have inside. The pastor shared with us that God never puts more on us than we can manage. Those words are something that have pulled me through so many difficult moments. Things at work have changed as well. Running the construction company has been better than I could have imagined. I've earned the respect of the employees, and we're getting more and more projects. Next month, we're going to begin working on a new residential area that will be good for the environment. Amy, you made the right decision. An old executive told me that at the board meeting. Slowly but surely, we are beginning to remove the bad things that Chris left behind. It hasn't exactly been a simple trip, but I can feel a clear positive change. So much that I've learned since then, the meaning of real strength, the ties that bind a family, and the significance of having a community. Betty is still always there to support me. Amy, you're such a strong mother. She is always my biggest cheerleader. She still assists Michael with his schoolwork. It's always been that way, and we still make cookies together for special occasions, just like always. At last, the legal proceedings wrapped up. Rachel was handed a 5-year prison term for trying to set a fire and for illegally entering a building. The mental health assessment found she was fully accountable for her actions. In the courtroom, she took the judgment calmly, without showing any emotion. As for Chris, he got a sentence that was put on hold for the crime of taking money that wasn't his. Having lost his business and his family, I occasionally hear whispers that he's now living out on the other side of the country. Mom, when will Dad be back home? Michael doesn't bring up questions like that anymore. With the help of our therapist, I've shared the facts with my son slowly but truthfully. A lot of it might still be too complicated for him to grasp completely, given that he's only 7 years old. However, he's handling it as best he can. Our life in this new home has brought back a sense of calm. On Saturdays and Sundays, the kids in the neighborhood come over to play baseball in the backyard. Michael has made some new friends at the Sunday school at church. Mom, I got another perfect score. The light of the setting sun shines on my son's face as he shows me his math test. The worried look he used to have is gone. Peering out through the kitchen window, I can see the leaves of the maple trees are turning red. The seasons shift, time keeps moving forward. Still, the important things that we hold dear haven't changed at all. Yes, this isn't a story that's finished. This is really a story of new starts. It's the beginning of our fresh start, sustained by our trust, our optimism, and most importantly, love.